In the last 21 months, and I'm kind of looking at scripts over the last, since March of last year, we've been talking about COVID, we've been talking about lockdowns, masks, and vaccinations every single week. And it seems at times all consuming. And it struck me, are we not paying attention to some issues that we should be paying attention as a result of that? So Nancy, I want to give you the first crack at this. Looking ahead to the 2022 elections in Montgomery County, what issues should we be paying more attention to and why?
Well, I mean, I do think that what we do not see is leadership on supporting our business community. I do not think we see great leadership on certainly expanding our road system, which is, I'm an outlier in the Democratic world on those points. But I do think focusing on our tax base and providing the infrastructure necessary to support it should be a priority, and it hasn't been. No one's going to run on those points, but they should.
Why not?
I think because the far left of the community doesn't see it that way. And the other thing about Montgomery County, and I think actually, Phil, you mentioned this earlier, we've got a lot of federal workers here and a lot of retired federal workers, and they didn't come out of the business community. And they're used to government per se, and they're used to government getting things done. They are less used to a more business-oriented society. And that's been our tradition for many, many years. And so I don't think that the business issue sings to Montgomery County the way it may in other places.
Bill, same question, but I'll expand it to, what about the state of Maryland? What's the big issue that we should be paying more attention to?
Well, I agree with Nancy about traffic. It's funny, in the mornings, you can even see going over the American Legion Bridge, and I think there's an article about this recently, how that traffic has virtually returned to normal. And so that just gives you an example of how things have changed and how, unfortunately, there hasn't been the type of action on whether you're talking about your main roads, your secondary roads, which would improve that. But overall, I would think the economic conditions in general. So even before COVID, you had still, while at the federal level, the regulatory burden was decreasing, you didn't really see a lot of the positive impact coming in at the state level in Maryland and overall. So what we need to do is look for ways, and it's a generic statement, but it's true. We need to look for ways to simply say, look, the best way for things to operate is to let people be, let them operate their business, let them set up their stores, let them do what they need to do and grow it, as opposed to looking for ways to restrict, looking for ways to control, because not only was the past regulatory burden heavy, and legal burden, but now you added all these COVID restrictions on top of that, and everybody's scared of their shadow. So we need to be getting a lot of that out of the way. And going back to COVID, since we started that, we need to simply be left alone. No more wondering, do we have to wake up next week and put a mask on if we go inside? Do we have to worry about not wearing it properly when we get on an airplane? It needs to go. If the scientists or any of their other folks know what they're doing, they'll go to their labs, they'll investigate, they'll figure out how to solve the problem, and then tell us, not keep us on this string every day.
So we were trying to stay away from COVID and ended up coming right back to COVID. But let me, since we're doing that, one of the issues I kind of want to raise, if we just have a few seconds, I'll come back to you, Nancy. You mentioned that we were talking about the role of government, the fact that government is such a dominant player in our area. And I'm struck that so many government workers and contractors too, that are part of the extended community for that, they're relocating. They're moving farther away because they don't have to pay, frankly, the high costs of Washington area and Montgomery County, but they also can telecommute. They can use Zoom and various other tools. Is this an issue that we should be paying more attention to?
Well, I think it's an issue for the present and the future. All our assumptions about where you live, how close to work you need to get, those have all gone out the window. I think federal employees really don't want to go back to the office if they can avoid it, and I think that's the case throughout the region. That's true in the private sector too. So query what we do with our big office buildings. query what we assume about traffic, I think we're seeing more midday traffic now than we used to, perhaps. And, the rush hour in the morning may be equivalent. But everything is changing. All of our assumptions about how we live is evolving based on COVID. And I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah.
Bill, one of the issues about traffic is we're seeing a drop in public transportation. Metro usage is down, and people are obviously also using cars too. Is that another one of the assumptions that we need to take a look at?
I think a little bit, because one of the biggest problems with, and me, I love trains, I'm Mr. Transportation, but one of the biggest problems always was, it was always geared toward people going in at one time and leaving. And then if you tried to travel on any of it any other time, you were just about out of luck. So, the one positive thing that's come from COVID is that we finally did get to that rethinking of going to the office and not needing to, or not needing to as much, that had long been coming. So we absolutely do need to look at that. We need to look at ways that we can meld those main lines of transportation with something that's able to get people into the suburbs. So, I don't personally like them, but the bikes, the scooters, Uber, Lyft, and I know there used to be you could kind of rent a car by an hour, by the hour, that type of thing that you needed to. I think seeing more of that, encouraging more of that, obviously done by the private sector, but can be encouraged by government to grow, that will help more and then make that public transit much more useful.
Well, that's a change from the current mode, but maybe a little bit more of the same.